going on?
What you're seeing is the result of the accumulation of countless Digimon data. Who is the strongest Digimon, you ask? Look no further. We present you with an answer. Behold, Machinedramon.
How's it going, guys? I'm an avid herpetologist. Welcome back to the channel. Today is the day that you guys have been waiting for, that I have been waiting for. It is officially the release of EX9 in the Digimon TCG, and with it, a complete revitalization of the Machinedramon archetype. This is a huge day for Machinedramon fans. The new deck going forward is going to look somewhat similar to the classic machine strategy. We're keeping the same heart of the deck itself, rotating around cyborgs while completely revitalizing and revamping and modernizing the classic machine look. The brand new Machinedramon brings a whole new life to the deck, and it changes in a lot of ways, but it also stays the same in a lot of ways. And as someone who's been testing this deck extensively leading up to the actual release, it is so much fun to pilot. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to in today's deck profile. We're going to be looking at my current list. As a disclaimer, as I said in the spoiler video way back when, this deck is not completely solved. My personal list has changed quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, constantly as I've play tested more, seen what works, seen what doesn't. Now I'm sure plenty of you guys clicked on this video wondering, which base am I going to go with? Classic purple or black? For today's deck profile, we're going with black. Now, I've been getting requests for a classic black-based Machinedramon deck profile for quite a while now. I do think that with this new support, we can justify finally bringing black back into the conversation. Now, black, unfortunately, still does not have a dedicated Machinedramon egg, and you do feel that quite a bit. Currently, the best egg we have to work off of is the new promo Monimon, which is not great. It's space filler. We really need a dedicated egg. I think in a perfect world, what Machinedramon is going to want going forward is a black egg that has a when attacking to discard a machine or cyborg and draw a card. That's it. I don't want to have to worry about on deletions. I don't have to want to worry about having Tamers in play. Any of that, just let me have an egg that is machine cyborg support, discard, draw one. That is all I am asking for. Regardless of the egg, black does have quite a few things going for it with the new Machinedramon archetype that I do think justifies playing black over purple. Now, purple is still very viable. I've been playing quite a bit of purple, and I can't decide which of these two bases I like better. I really think you can go either way with your list, and every single list you're going to see online is going to look very different. There's so many people out right now that are scrambling to try to figure this deck out, and I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I don't think it's going to get solved. I think this is still a deck with a very high skill ceiling, and I do think this still has a very high skill floor. I think this is not an easy deck to pick up. So if you are expecting to even see my deck profile, pick it up and immediately do well with it, you're going to be disappointed. Like, this is a deck that takes a lot of time and practice with, because there are so many effects to keep track of. There are so many ways you can use each of the different cards in the deck. There's a lot to this deck. There's, no pun intended, a lot of moving parts. So if you are interested in learning Machinedramon, hopefully my deck today is going to give you guys a good place to start. I think this deck is very solid in all the playtesting I've been doing, but please understand that this is a deck you are going to have to take time to practice with, and if you need any assistance with the deck, with playing it, anything like that, number one, I will be posting some gameplay, hopefully sometime in the next week. Looks like it has already been added. EX9 has already been added to DCGO, so I'm going to try to get some gameplay footage posted for you guys, but if you have questions in the meantime, the link of all of my videos is a link to my Discord, and we are always happy to give out advice, suggestions, anything like that. So with that out of the way, guys, I know you guys are excited. Let's go ahead, cut the intro where it is. Let's get into the deck profile, and I'll show you guys what I'm cooking with today. Alright guys, let's get into it. Starting off with our eggs as always. Now I mentioned it in the intro, we are going to be playing 4 copies of Monimon for our black base egg. Now, Monimon is not a perfect egg by any margins. This is not an ideal situation for sure. If we had a black version of Demimera, this deck would be so much stronger. But we got to use what we have, and currently Monimon is the best generic black draw egg that we have access to. So even though Monimon is not ideal, it is what I'm going to be playing for generic draw until we get Metal Empire support or something that will give us a more reliable, disposable black egg. So what we're going to be playing for our rookies, starting off, we are still playing 4 copies of Ukkomon. Even in black base, I think the consistency that Ukkomon offers is irreplaceable. This isn't very much an OTK strategy now, so being able to find the pieces that we need is going to be important. The only super valuable card that Ukkomon cannot find is Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, so you do kind of have to be careful with stacking those, but if you get an opening hand with an Ukko and Attack of the Heavy Mobile, pretty much anything you draw off the top is just straight up value for you. So 4 copies of Ukkomon is going to be a great consistency card for us. I'm also playing my 4 copies of EX1 Hagurumon. Hagurumon is, in my opinion, the best Hagurumon to be playing now. Even though BT15 may read better on paper, one of the big distinctions between the new Machinedramon and the old is in order to use assembly, you have to have your cyborgs in the trash. And black base, unlike purple, does not have a ton of ways to actually discard cards, which kind of makes Haguru a pretty important piece to actually get some cyborgs into the trash on those vital turns, especially when you're trying to set up. So I'm going to be playing 4 copies of Ukko and 4 copies of EX1 Haguru. That's actually it from my rookies. These are the only rookies I'm going to be playing in the deck. So got our 4 copies of Ukko and 4 copies of Haguru. Haguru is a card I'm more than happy to leave in raising or just hard play from my hand. It's going to be serving double duty in that regard. But that's actually it for our lower end. I'm actually not playing any level 4s in this list. Now, that does not mean you cannot play level 4s. If you have copies of Promo Raremon or even Deltamon, both of these cards are excellent additions to the deck that can be used in a level 4 slot. But for my list in particular, I've actually saved those Digimon slots for additional option cards. And we're going to talk about those at the very end, because I think in black base in particular, the options you have access to is one of the big selling points over purple base. So I've actually chosen to omit all of my level 4s. I'm only playing the 8 level 3s, 0 level 4s, and then of course our big suit of level 5s. But before we get to our level 5s, I'm actually going to start by talking about our level 6s. Starting us off, we have our 4 copies of EX9 Machinedramon. This Machinedramon is just such an incredibly powerful card. It reads fantastic, but I'm telling you right now, it plays even better. When you've actually sat behind this card and you get to experience the feeling of how cheap it is to play from your hand, how much extra value you get from being able to abuse on plays, it really is hard to put into words like just how good this brand new Swiss Army knife of abilities we have access to really is for the strategy. Being able to have that on play on top of everything else that Machinedramon has always had on top of it, it's so much extra value. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it really, really is. So this Machinedramon is phenomenal. Now, I do see some lists online that are running copies of EX1 still and copies of BT11. If you are choosing to go with that kind of like a core for your list, again, I think that's fine. EX1 especially is still a pretty decent card. But for my list in particular, I'm really trying to lean into the OTK strategy. So I'm going to be playing 4 copies of EX9 Machinedramon, and I'm actually not going to be playing any EX1 or any BT11. This is the only Machinedramon that I'm going to be playing, and there's reasons for that. This card, I think, is just head and shoulders better, and I think it is absolutely worth just sticking to this card and really committing to this card as a strategy. With that being said, we do still have some accompaniment for our Machinedramon. Of course, we have our 2 copies of Chaosdramon, and we have 2 copies of Chaosdramon X Antibody. Now, I want to talk about both of these together. We'll try to keep it fairly brief, but these are kind of combo enablers slash backup plans. More so Chaosdramon than, of course, Chaos X. Chaosdramon X is going to be the better card to enable your OTKs, since using, for instance, the new EX9 Megadramons inherit. When we unsuspend and attempt to delete Chaosdramon X, we get to trash the security and also get our new second attack. So Chaosdramon X is like hyper aggressive in that regard. But also, like, if we've already gotten a check, you don't need that security trash necessarily. Chaosdramon is still a way to end the game on top of a Machinedramon that has an unsuspend effect. So Chaosdramon is still a very, very solid card that helps us to close games out. But again, it's also a backup plan. So if we're in a situation where we're either not finding our pieces, we need to control the board earlier, or just establish something, and we don't want to commit Machinedramon yet, we have plenty of cyborgs now that can be played for 5 memory, potentially 2 off of Supreme Connection. So playing one of those out, and then just going straight into a Chaosdramon after getting value from the on-play, it's a great way to just establish some very early board presence to help stymie our opponent's early aggression and help hopefully push them back a little bit, or at least just long enough that we can establish our OTK strategy. So Chaosdramon is still a good card. I'm playing it at 2 copies. 2 copies of Chaosdramon X, since that can go straight over Machinedramon now, and you don't need the in-between step. We can afford to cut one of the Chaosdramons, so we just keep to a clean 8 level 6s. Hopefully they won't be cluttering our hand up quite as much as in the olden days. Alright, with our level 6s and level 3s out of the way, let's get into our level 5s. We've got quite a few new additions. Starting with what is, in my opinion, the best cyborg in the deck moving forward, that is EX9 Megadramon. So all of the new EX9 cyborgs have an on-play that lets you tuck a Digimon card from your trash face down into the sources, and then does something based on how many face down sources you have. In the case of Megadramon, it's going to pop 2 bodies with a base start of play cost 4 or less, with an additional 1 added to that cost for each of the face downs. So just by itself, it'll be popping 5 or less. If you have Analogman, you can start stacking that even higher and potentially hit level 5s. But the big reason, obviously, Megadramon is so good is that inheritable. End of attack, delete your lowest play cost Digimon in order to unsuspend your Digimon. Actually, I misspoke there. Let me actually clarify that, because there is a very important distinction here. You will unsuspend your Digimon first and then attempt to delete something. So if this, for instance, is detached, the unsuspend has already happened, so you don't have to worry about anything fizzling. You unsuspend your Digimon, then attempt to delete. If you have Machinedramon as your only thing in play, you can detach Megadramon, and you'll still stand unsuspended and be able to continue your aggression. That's the big important part of the combo. If you do have Megadramon and detach it for Machinedramon's protection, you can then Digivolve into Chaosdramon or Chaos X, retuck that source, and then you get to unsuspend a second time. Being able to keep stacking that unsuspend effect is how we're going to reach those crazy OTK combo turns. Let's go ahead and start talking about some of our other cyborgs, though. We do have quite a few to get through. So we've got our 1 copy of Andromon. Andromon's on play is going to give something DP- and has a blocker inheritable. Now, this is a card I actually have strongly considered trading out for MetalMamemon. I misspoke in my spoiler video, and I said that MetalMame bounces the card it hits to hand, but it actually doesn't. It spins it to the bottom of the deck. That is a big distinction. It's a permanent form of removal, not just a bounce. So I do think MetalMamemon is a pretty good kind of silver bullet card against certain strategies. But the thing is, Andromon, I think, is just going to be more consistently helpful. This is a card that I think you can swap out for something like MetalMame from EX9 if you want to. I'm currently playing Andromon because if I don't have Attack with Heavy Mobile, I would rather have Blocker than a generic Unsuspend, which doesn't really do a whole lot for me. So I think having Blocker in general is just going to be a little bit more helpful, even in situations where I'm swinging and getting an Unsuspend without having to keep turn. Like if I'm swinging with like Megadramon or another Unsuspend effect, I get the Unsuspend, but I don't have the memory to actually get that second attack off. At least with Andromon and the sources, I have Blocker, and that stack can still do something more on the opponent's turn. So that's my reasoning. Like I said, I think MetalMame is still a pretty good card, and you can still find room for it. But in the list that I'm playing today, I did not have space for it. It's very, very tight in your level 5 slots, so no MetalMame. From the new cyborgs, I'm playing 2 Megadramon, 1 Andro, and I am playing a single copy, of course, of the second best one in my opinion, MetalGreymon. MetalGreymon's Tuck effect lets you delete up to a certain DP amount of your opponent's Digimon. It's a great scatter shot to clear a bunch of small bodies off the board with a generic Security +1 inheritable. Now, I mentioned in my spoilers video, this deck is finally going to be leaning away from security trash effects and very much leaning into extra security checks. Now that we have unsuspends, we can abuse those extra checks so much more than we would be able to abuse those security trashes. So I'm actually going to be playing a total of 3 different Security +1 inheritables. We have MetalGreymon, we also have WarGrowlmon X Antibody, and a single copy of Volcanomon. Now, you're probably going to see these popping up in a lot of lists, and if you're not already aware of the reasons why, one of the big distinctions the new Machinedramon has over the old is it cares about card names, not card numbers. What that means is, there's a lot of classic cyborgs for the Machinedramon archetype that are suddenly a lot less appealing because we can't tuck them at the same time as some of their other more important versions of the card with their particular names. So there's a whole host of these guys that you're going to have a much harder time finding space for because you can't tuck them together at the same time. And if you're going to have more than one of the same name, you want to make sure there are at least valuable on plays. So if you have to tuck one over the other, you're still going to get value out of that second one. So the extra copies, for instance, of like MetalGreymon that I'm playing, are going to be very high impact on play effects that are going to do things even if I have both of them showing and have to tuck one with assembly and one with the on play effect. So that's the reason you're going to see some kind of weird names in Machinedramon lists moving forward. Volcanomon and WarGrowlmon X historically have been like pretty D tier, very lower tier cyborgs to select for a Machinedramon strategy. But now, just on the merit of having unique names from the other archetypal cyborgs, these guys all of a sudden are like must-haves. These guys having unique names is a huge benefit and really boosts their playability. Speaking of other copies of MetalGreymon, the other, I think, second best cyborg in the deck now is BT7 MetalGreymon. This card went from a tech choice to one of the strongest cyborgs that you can tuck with the on-play. The on-play is if you have a Tamer in play, you get to gain 2 memory for free, with an inheritable to gain an additional memory if something gets deleted. So if you're blitzing, you'll also potentially be able to gain another memory on top of that, but realistically, the part that matters is gaining 2 memory for free after dropping Machinedramon. Basically what that means, if you want to do the math, is that if you're playing Machinedramon off Supreme Connection, tuck MetalGreymon last, you're playing Machinedramon for only a single memory. There is so much combo potential after making such a memory efficient play like that. So this MetalGreymon, I think you should be playing no less than 2 copies. I would be careful about playing more than 2 for the same reason I mentioned already, which is so many, unique names. You want to make sure there's not too much overlap. So these are the only 3 MetalGreymon that I'm playing. Both of them have good inherits and good on plays. So you got to be kind of careful about that and cognizant when you're picking your cyborg lineup now, just to make sure that there isn't too much name overlap so it doesn't get in the way of your smooth assemblies on early turns. Now, the only other cyborg I'm playing 2 copies of is another cyborg with a super, super high impact on play. That is MetalTyrannomon from EX9. It is no secret to Machinedramon players that D-Digivolve has always been our biggest weakness. Now that we have access to MetalTyrannomon's on play, we finally have actual factual D-Digivolve protection, and it comes on a very flexible ability. Not only are we going to be able to keep some of our security trash effects, just in case it will come up against certain strategies, but the on-play will actually do different things for you depending on when you decide to tuck the card under Machinedramon. So realistically, there are actually 2 ways that we can make use of this MetalTyrannomon, offensively and defensively. And what I mean by that is there's realistically 2 big opportunities to be tucking MetalTyrannomon into your sources. On play and when attacking. You can tuck your final cyborg during either of those windows. If you're tucking MetalTyranno on play, there's one of 2 ways you're going to be using it. Number 1, you can suspend a body. So you can either suspend yourself or you can suspend an opponent's body. If we're blitzing, the suspend effect on the opponent's side is obviously great for exposing high-value targets, so making sure we can swing into things that may not have been exposed before. However, the other side of it, if we either suspend ourselves or if we tuck this while we are mid-attack, we are already going to be suspended. We're going to be able to de-digivolve something and provide ourselves with de-digivolve and bounce protection. So if you want to use it offensively, you can tuck this card immediately on play to suspend an opponent's body, to tenderize it, and get it ready to swing into. Or if you want to be defensive, either on play you can suspend yourself if you do not have Blitz, or if you do have Blitz, wait to tuck your last source until you're already attacking, tuck MetalTyranno, then you get some de-digivolve so you can potentially get rid of ace targets, or you can just give yourself that de-digivolve protection, which is great to help you survive until the following turn. This is possibly the best on play that Machinedramon has access to now, so I've actually bumped this card up to 2 copies. I'm not sure if many lists are doing that, but you should if you aren't already. This card is a card you want to be seeing pretty consistently, and if you see both copies, you get 2 instances, number 1 of the security trash effect, but you'll also have the benefit of tucking one turn and then tucking it again on the follow-up turn. So just having more than 1 instance of de-digivolve protection, thumbs up. Super, super good. Super happy to see it. All right, DP buffs. We have a brand new plus 4K DP buff in the form of MetalGreymon Alterous mode. This has an on-play to delete an opposing body with 8,000 DP or less, and of course a generic your turn inherit to give plus 4,000 DP. Since we are an OTK deck that is looking to do a lot of security checks, what we want to make sure is that we are not potentially losing any of our sources unnecessarily during those checks. In order to do that, we need to make sure we are getting over potentially harmful DP thresholds, and getting all the way up to 16k with just this one DP inherit, freeing up our other spaces, is really good for those combo blitz turns. Making sure that you do not have to detach, for instance, your Megadramon early, so you can determine when you get to detach that. It is important if you want to actually get the combo to go through. So I'm playing my copy of MetalGreymon Alterous, and of course we still have our copies of Jetsilphymon and Daipenmon to help us be both offensive and defensive with all turns to plus 2k DP buffs. Just a few cyborgs left here. We do have our single copy of Cyberdramon ACE. So in my spoiler video, I was pretty high on a lot of random aces. I'm going to tell you right now, the fact that we can't control which sources get detached, be very careful with how many aces you run. WarGrowlmon ACE, Rapidmon ACE, and Cyberdramon ACE are all perfectly viable, but if you end up with a stack with multiple aces, you're going to wind up having to detach them when you don't want to. So this is actually the only ace that I'm playing, just because it has a phenomenal on-play to help play out our Tamers, and we have a lot more of them now, while also still having that de-digivolve when attacking. This is also a card that can get 2 de-digivolves in a single turn. If we tuck this last, not only do we get our Tamer, but we get a de-digivolve from the on-play and a second de-digivolve when attacking. So also can be really helpful in a pinch. If you need to, for instance, if you're playing against Adventure, they have multiple level 5s that are threatening aces, you can de-digivolve more than one and hopefully take them off of those ace plays. So one copy of Cyberdramon because he is just that good. I'm also playing a single copy of Oblivimon. Again, OTK strategy now. We don't want to potentially be held up by attack redirects or blocks, and against plenty of decks, they're going to have access to those. So a single copy of Oblivimon that we can tuck when we need to make sure that our opponent is not able to redirect or potentially try to stall out our OTKs. Definitely nice to have. I think one copy of that is totally feasible. And finally, we have our single copy of MachGaogamon. This card is limited to 1. Again, this is a unique name. The new Machinedramon does not care about color, which means we can tuck it anytime we want, which is obviously phenomenal. Machinedramon decks have wanted access to this card for quite a while, and now we finally have it. The unsuspend condition is just for your opponent to have 8 or more cards in hand, which plenty of decks are going to get to on their own. You don't even have to really encourage them down that path. In the game of Digimon, people draw cards so quickly that by turn 3 or 4, almost every single game you're probably going to see opponents with big hands like that. So I'm going to be playing my one copy of MachGaogamon, so we're going to have a total of 3 unsuspends and 3 Esther checks. As long as we can hit at least one of each of these, we can facilitate OTKs off of that. So that's going to be my reasoning. So we've got all of our cyborg lineup here. We are playing a total of 16. First up with our Tamers is going to be one of the ways we can discard our cyborgs. Of course, we have our 4 copies of BT11 Analogman. This is very easily still the 4 of, since obviously turn after turn, he's going to be helping us get our cyborgs into our trash, digging a little bit deeper, while providing us with some extra memory resources, while still, of course, being the same defensive shield that he has always been. If we can establish an early machine or an early chaos, even if we can't OTK, these Analogmans will, of course, help us to make sure that we are not dying before we can facilitate our wins. Next up, we are going to have 3 copies of the brand new Analogman from EX9. We have finally got an Analogman that is a memory setter. Super, super, super happy about that. Anytime we would play a machine or cyborg Digimon with a play cost of 7 or more, you can suspend this to draw a card, gain a memory, and then you may choose if you would like to place a card from your hand face down as the card's bottom source. This is great for not only loading up our level 5 cyborgs to make sure we are getting big, big value off of those guys, it's additional memory resources, additional card draw, and is really just, again, it's such a super easy way to play out our EX9 Machinedramons without passing turn. These cards are just super strong. I think 4 is just about right. I don't want to flood on these like too terribly much, and I personally think 7 Tamers is plenty. The only cyborg you need to remember that you will not be able to gain memory for is your Cyberdramon ACE. Since it costs 5, it does not fit the threshold of being 7 or more. So you will not be able to activate your Analogmans when you play Cyberdramon, but any of our other cheap to play cards, our EX9 cyborgs or even BT7 Metal Gray, you will be able to play those and still gain your memory back despite playing them for cheaper cost. That's one of the ways we can really choke on early turns. I mean, heck, Analogman by himself with one of the new cyborgs or MetalGreymon, you basically are going to be starting at 3, playing these for a net of 5, and gaining 1 back. So you're basically automatically choking them at 1 just by having this in play and dropping one of these guys. That actually does remind me real quick. I do want to mention one of the things that people have been pointing out is potential floodgates being an issue for this deck, and I do think that is important to mention. So this new Machinedramon does not gain memory the way the old one does. It reduces play cost, which is currently a much more common floodgate because of decks like Royal Knights. With that being said, we do have plenty of ways in our main board to get rid of those floodgates without having to like pass our opponent a metric ton of memory. In a worst case scenario, if we are not able to reduce play costs, we can still play one of our EX9 cyborgs, all of which have removal effects. Analogman will be able to gain us memory back from 7, so in a worst case scenario, we're still just going from our memory of 3 to immediately passing our opponent back to a normal memory setter's amount. So we're not even going like super negative in memory. So all of our EX9 cyborgs are a great way to deal with it, but there's also like a few other minor ones to mention. One of the important interactions is knowing that BT7 MetalGreymon does not reduce play cost, it actually gains memory. So number one, it will be affected by a different floodgate, but that also means if they have something like Solarmon or Psychmon in play, you can play this and you'll still be able to play it for the reduced cost. There have been games where I've done that, and if you go into, for instance, Digivolving directly into MetalGreymon Alterous, which can go on top of MetalGreymon, you can immediately pop the body for one other memory. Or you can just disregard the floodgate entirely, play MetalGreymon, and go straight into Chaosdramon or Machinedramon. So there are ways to play around those floodgates. It's certainly going to be something that you kind of need to be aware of. Try to hold back like one of your cheap to play cyborgs at all times if you can. Get rid of your other cyborgs first, and try to hold back an answer to those floodgates until you're ready to combo off. Just a general tip if you're going to be trying to play this deck. Like I said, it is something that you kind of have to get used to and learn like what resources to hold back for what situations. All right, all that's left is option cards. So we have, of course, our 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. Making sure we can find this card is one of the most important things we need to do during our early turns, since again, Ukkomon can find us any of our other cards that we really need to combo outside of this. So as long as you can find Attack of the Heavy Mobile, you're in a pretty good spot. Just feel free to start churning through your deck and set up for that Machinedramon OTK turn as quickly as you can. Speaking of finding it and setting up OTK turns, we've got our 4 copies of Supreme Connection. In my testing with this deck, one of the things that I have learned is this card is good at all points of the game. It's a fantastic turn 1, getting to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, remove any 2 of them so you're digging 2 cards deeper, while also setting up your next draw. But even if you don't want to use the delay, if let's say that you're on a combo turn, you already have your memory setter Analogman in play, right? Let's say that we're in a situation where we are either like missing specific pieces that we need in our trash, or we haven't quite gotten enough pieces in the trash yet. Supreme Connection will let us get one more piece of setup, potentially even finding the Machinedramon that we need, trashing another cyborg, and if we want to play Machinedramon with our Analogman and BT7 Metal Gray showing, we're still going to gain that 3 memory back. So if we play Machine off of Supreme Connection with these 2 cards, then you can play Machinedramon completely for free, but even if you don't have the delay, if you just need to use this as a setup turn when you're ready to combo, you can still play Machinedramon for only 3 memory, even after dropping this. So just something to consider. I think this card is definitely worth playing at 4. I've heard some people saying they prefer it at 3. Totally fine. For my list, I'm really leaning heavily into the option card support, and a big reason I'm actually playing the 4 copies has to do with the last card that I'm also playing, which is a full 4 copies of an oldie but a goodie from way back in the day, 4 copies of Ultimate Connection. We are playing a full 8 connection cards in this deck. Might as well call Machinedramon 5G at this point with how strong that connection is. Ultimate Connection is the Machinedramon specific Hammer Spark. We can discard a cyborg from our hand, draw a card, and gain memory, with the same ability coming out of our security, but it's even better. Technically, you're paying 1 for Ultimate Connection and then gaining 2, and that's exactly how much you're going to gain out of security. So basically, everything on this bottom row, all of these cards, your opponent has to potentially worry about coming out of your security stack. That's a lot. This is a lot of pretty high value cards that we could see out of our security stack in these early chip turns, and it really does help threaten our opponent. So even if our opponent is going to try to promote and, for instance, OTK us before we can kill them, Ultimate Connection, if they happen to check one at the wrong time, could steal a turn back, and we can just kill them right back instead. So, like, this I do think is one of the big things that I missed for a really long time that gives you incentive to play black base. The fact that we can play a full 8 copies of these 2 connections, I think these cards alone are worth playing black for. But if you are going to play black over purple, you do need some incentive, and I think these cards are that incentive. Obviously, through that conversation, you probably also gathered that Ultimate Connection is a free, in fact, memory positive way to get more cyborgs into the trash if you're ready for your combo turn. Hold a few of these back, and then when you're ready to combo, chain a few of them off, dump a bunch of extra cyborgs, and you're ready to go with a ton of extra memory. But another interaction that I have never encountered before, because it's been a while since I've played a full black base, Ultimate Connection and how it interacts with Supreme Connection. If I have both of these in my hand, and I play Supreme Connection, let's say that I'm looking for Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, right? Let's say that we need our Blitz option. Play Supreme Connection, we find one off the top, but we don't have a way to grab it. Have no fear. If we can even grab one of our cyborgs off of Supreme Connection, which immediately sets up the card that we need to discard for Ultimate Connection, which can then grab that Attack of the Heavy Mobile off the top. So these two just chain really well into each other. This helps set this up super well. Obviously, of course, this is also a good choke tool, but that again is, I think, going to be something that is going to be very much a skill call that you're going to have to kind of learn as you play Machinedramon. Do you want to really like waste this on an early turn where, like, let's say you're starting at 2 memory and you're trying to get a Tamer out? Don't necessarily waste this on an early turn just to choke them at 1 if it's not going to make any difference. Give them the 2 memory, like it doesn't really matter on those early turns. Save this for a combo turn where you can get much more value out of that memory that you are going to have on your own turn. So just something to think about. Like I said, this is the full list, but this is by no means a definitive final draft list. This deck is not solved. There are so many tech cards that you can play in Machinedramon now. No 2 lists are going to look the same. But the 8 connection list is going to be what I'm going to be starting with in EX9. Hopefully you guys find this interesting. I can tell you with experience, this is a very, very fun deck to pilot. Super, super fun to sit behind, especially as you do get better about it. You learn how to arrange the order of your cyborgs a little bit better. The skill ceiling for this deck is insane. Just be aware that, like I said, it does have a pretty low skill floor too. This is a very easy deck to misplay with, but when you get good with it, it will reward you. With that, guys, thank you all so much for joining me. I know you guys have been asking me to see my list for EX9. Here you have it. This is what we're starting with. If you guys really want, I can create a deck list for purple too, but I will be starting on black base, at least at the beginning of EX9, and kind of seeing how things feel. Also, the last several lists I've put up on my channel have been purple, so wanted to give black a little bit of love too. With that, guys, thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your night. Leave any comments and questions in the comments below, and I will see you all next time.